Tina lying in the shade of the tent. Okay folks, it's 5 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Pizza cooking in the sun. We'll get to that, that's a separate topic for later. Water, sugar, chopped ginger. I haven't got a grater, or if I have, I haven't got it to hand. I might have one tucked away somewhere, but chopped ginger, and there's the skin that I'm going to use separately. And elsewhere I've got a bottle with a suspension of yeast from a couple of weeks ago when I did bread. Had to take a little bit of time today to resuscitate it. I seem to have left that yeast unused longer than I would have expected. But first, coffee. Looks like it's about to boil. Not far to go anyway. Don't think I've got the arms. Never got enough arms. Don't know whether you can see that. It's not quite there yet. But I'll just turn it up for 30 seconds. As soon as that's done, I'll make my coffee and I'll be back with you. Well, that went well. So, while I was pouring the water, I apparently pressed the off button for an extended period and rebooted the phone. So you haven't missed much, other than me pouring a pan of boiling water over this finger. Brews are made. Cup of coffee, 2 cups of chocolate, and a flask of coffee. I took water from both bottles, probably unequal amounts, that won't matter, I'll level out later. Just going to bring the water to a boil and put the sugar in and the ginger, and then the fun can begin. Yeah, pro tip, don't pour boiling water over your hand, it hurts. Okay, there's a lot of water in that pan, it's going to take a while. I'll bring you back when something exciting happens. Okay, I'm back. We're not boiling yet, but it's quite warm. I'm going to turn up the heat for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm going to add the sugar and the ginger. It doesn't have to actually boil, but I want it somewhere near to boiling for the sugar. I'll put the chopped ginger in while it's hot. The skin from the ginger often contains natural yeasts. Depends how much it's been scrubbed by the supermarkets, I've no idea. But that's why I chop the skin and put the skin separately. I'll chop that up a little bit more finely and put that in as the mix cools, probably around the time that I put the yeast in. So the process is I'm going to bring it to the boil, or close to the boil, put in the sugar and the ginger, bring it to a boil, let it cool a little, not too much, but cool a little, and then I'm gonna split it into these 2 bottles, which have already got water in it. Pour the mix into those, which will obviously cool the mix overall. Test it, see how hot it feels, and see when's appropriate for adding see when it's appropriate to add the yeast and the chopped skin, ginger skin. And then it'll just be a case of putting it away in the tent for up to 4 weeks, I think is the thing. If you want ginger beer, if you can have it like as soon as 3 days. But I want to try and get something a bit stronger and drier. So I'm going to try and do it longer. See how that goes. So that's where we're at. That's what I'm doing. For better or for worse. That's Delta Mike out for now. Okay, we're back. I've added the first bag of sugar and the I was going to say garlic, but that's not right, is it? Ginger. I've added the ginger and the first bag of sugar. I'm going to add half of the second bag. I'm going to hold the rest back for later in the process, maybe in a few days' time. And obviously I'm going to be careful that it doesn't spill over at this stage. Somewhere around there. I'm going to give that a stir. And then I'm going to leave it alone. I think I will let it come to an actual boil if there's enough gas in the canister to actually bring it to the boil. Like I said, we'll save the rest of that second kilogram of sugar for later. Now the yeast I'm using is just a standard bread yeast, so I'm not expecting remarkable amounts of fermentation. It'll struggle to get above 5 or 6%. Might do there or thereabouts, maybe a little bit better on it if the gods are with us and the temperatures are all okay, but not much. This is not going to be a 13 or 14% by volume, so there's no point going too heavy with the sugar. It'll just get left in the drink if the yeast dies at 5 or 6%. So it is as it is. I'm going to let that come to a boil if I can. As it cools, I'll add the skin from the ginger, which I've now chopped, and then we'll decant it into the bottles, which I've evened up the levels. I poured from the one bottle into the other just to even up the levels a bit. I've got my funnel, which is basically the top from a pop bottle. It's been cut off and used for various things. When the water boils, there I might dip the funnel into the boiling water just to sterilise. Probably not necessary, but hey. And that's it until we get a boil going. Okay, guys. Second cuppa. This one's a chocolate. Over here we're struggling a little bit. Seems determined to not come to a boil. It's hot, but we might be running low on gas. I don't know. It's hot. It's close, but it's no real movement. I just turned it up a bit more. See how we go. I think we're nicely centered on the stove, so it's not an issue. It's not something I'm doing wrong. There's a bit of a breeze and it's not exactly from the direction where I've got the wind guard, the windshield. Maybe I should put more around the back there. I don't think that should be a big factor though. We'll just give it 5 more minutes and see how we go. Like I said at the start, if it doesn't actually boil, it's not a biggie. It's not a big deal. It possibly helps with the sugars, getting them to dissolve and become more of a syrupy mixture. But no, it shouldn't affect anything. So in 5 or 10 minutes I'll be decanting it. Well, in 5 or 10 minutes I'll turn the heat off and let it cool. Maybe half an hour after that I'll decant it into the bottles. We'll see how it goes. Okay guys, I'll bring you back when there's news. Okay folks, I think we're going to give up on the idea of an actual boil. Life's too short. I don't have enough gas for this shit. It's hot, it's steaming, it's circulating, but it's not going to hit a boil, and I don't think it matters. But there's a guy online, if you want to check him out, there's a guy called Paw. I think P-A-W, I think. His channel's called, I think it's called Doing It Cheap, or Doing It Cheaply. And he does wines and things where he literally opens a gallon bottle of fruit juice, pours in a bag of sugar, pours in some yeast and closes it up. No heat involved. So you know, each to their own. This, I'm going to turn it off now. Hopefully I got some gas left. Otherwise I'll have used the bottle in under a week. I can't afford that. Who can? So I'm just going to leave that with the lid on. I'm going to leave it to steep in its own juices. Like I said, when it gets down in temperature, I'll either add the peel into the pan there while it's warm, or maybe I'll add it after I've decanted it into the bottles. You'll be back for the process either way. Until then, Delta Mike out. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, I've emptied the syrupy ginger mix back into the bottles. A look around on the ground and should show that I didn't spill much. Not too much at all. Not bad by my standards. And I've brought out my my yeast mix. I left it in the tent until now because ultraviolet light and yeast are not they don't go well together, so I don't want it out here too long. Like I said, I had to do a bit of work with it this morning. It had all clumped and fallen to the bottom, which is what it does if you don't look after it. It kind of goes into hibernation, and some of it dies and falls to the bottom, and some of it clumps together and kind of hibernates and falls to the bottom. So I added a spoon of sugar and some oxygen and shook it about a bit, and repeated, I think a second time, a second spoon of sugar later, and aerated it a little bit more. When it's got air in there, when it's got oxygen in, the yeast multiplies. When the air runs out, when the oxygen runs out, that's when it starts making alcohol, if I remember correctly. So what we want is for it to be multiplying and kind of bring the mix back to life. I'm just going to put it's not exactly a measure, I'm just going to put a good glug into each bottle, and you know, as long as there's some yeast in, it'll start to multiply and do its thing. Obviously, if you start with more yeast, it can get going quicker. If you start with less, it has to multiply more first. That should be the only difference. I mean, really, that's probably too much. I'll do a better job of trying to maintain the yeast I've got, and I'm going to put the lid on these and shake them get the oxygen mixed in with the liquid. See where we go from there. Check back soon. Okay folks, no idea how well on camera I am or I'm not. But, like I said, lid on, good shake to get the air into the mix. This mix is still warm. If I tighten the lid and leave it tightened, as it cools, it's going to create a vacuum and maybe be difficult to open again. We don't want that. Same with the next one. Now, a little bit sticky. So that's the idea. Loosen the lid. I'm just going to put those away in the tent with the lid on, so that nothing can crawl in, but so they rattle. Basically, I want air to be able to get in and out. As those start to off gas carbon dioxide, we want that to escape. Otherwise, it gets trapped in, builds pressure and carbonates, and the presence of carbon dioxide over time is what kills the yeast. We don't want that yet. We want that at the end of the process, if at all. Two things will kill the yeast. Well, no, a few things will kill the yeast, but the two main ones are carbon dioxide and too much alcohol present. Once the yeast is swimming, basically the alcohol is its own urine. And once it's swimming in its own urine too much, it doesn't like it and stops working. Other things that can affect it are acidity, temperature, and whether anything else nasty gets in. But we obviously hope to avoid that. I'll put those away in well, not in the dark, but in the tent, so they're not in sunlight. And we'll monitor them over the next few days. Okay, folks. That's it for now. Delta Mike out.